Welcome, everybody. I'm happy that you joined us for a conversation about financial benchmarking, and along with that, strategies for helping your business be as financially healthy as possible. Anyone who's joined the Hinge team in the past knows that we feel very strongly about our work in helping you become as financially healthy as possible, and in being sure that you have a great balance of quality programming, which is what you got into this business for, and financial health, because they're not at odds with each other. They're necessary for each other. And in supporting yourself in your personal financial health, you also support the schools, which supports the employees and the families and the children. So taking care of yourself and your business first is always your mission. You're no good for anyone else until you do that. So it's absolutely required. I'm happy to be joined today by Taylor Leaphart. Taylor has been with the Hinge team for about 6 months now, and we have been thrilled to have him on our team as he added to our financial analyst team. And Taylor is all day long looking at financial documents from early education companies. He is paying attention to trends. He's paying attention to how changes in market conditions are impacting financial statements. We're going to talk a little bit about that. But Taylor and I will tag team this information, and he will be a great source of any technical questions you guys have about what numbers look like, and also how that parlays into the value of businesses and real estate. That part of it's not really our intention today, but he is masterful at that. If you have a question around it, we would love to have your questions. You can do that in either the chat or the Q&A section of your webinar bar, and we will have about 45 minutes of content. And then we really want your questions. We'd like to hear from you guys about what you're experiencing, whether what we're talking about that we hear across the industry is still true for you, and if there are other challenges that you're facing that either we or the community can support. So we are going to get started with what the Hinge team believes is the 5 pillars of your financial health. So in leading directors and owners for this is, well, it's my personal 38th year in the industry, is Hinge's 20th year. So we're really excited to celebrate that this year. But we have built norms that we see across the industry, and we temper that constantly with changes in market conditions and in the way that we operate. And let's not just sugarcoat this thing. This is a really difficult business to run. And that's not new. This has been a very difficult business to run. The whole 38 years I've been here, and I'm sure it was difficult to run before that. And it's also not new that we're having staff challenges. So for 38 years, I've been talking about it's really difficult to hire and to create an environment where people want to work, because we will never pay them enough to do the job that we're doing. That is not new. It is at a escalated level now that requires that we invest heavily in the things that employees are looking for. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. But we get how difficult this industry is. We, a lot of times when we get the call, the raised hand, check me out of here, I'm done with this thing. It's very regularly about staffing challenges. And again, that has escalated to a whole new norm. Another thing we're looking out for you guys is potential challenges in the future for businesses that might be propping up their operations based on continued grant funds and availability of money that's not coming from tuition sources. So we want to talk a little bit about that as well. It's great to have that. There are creative things that you can do with it. We just want to be sure that you are mindful that it will go away and that you need to be prepared to be sure that your business is in the right condition to operate on the other side of that grant funding. So we are going to get started a little bit. I have some Hinge news just to tell you guys about some opportunities coming up. First of all, this is our Hinge family. We like each other a little bit, as you can see. It's an amazing group of people. I feel pretty blessed to have this group of people to work with and execute our mission with. And we have expanded some of our regular services, which are at the core of it. We help people sell their businesses in real estate, right? So we help people understand what it's worth. We bring a over 500 group database of buyers to those processes and create a competitive situation where we help people exit well and exit with the value they deserved after what they have created. So that hasn't changed. We also do a one-day financial deep dive, and our first one in person since COVID is coming up in May in Chicago. And it's really not nice of me to mention because that is sold out with quite a wait list, but look for more of that. What we do there is we analyze each company's financial data. We meet with you the afternoon before to point you in the right direction with where your best opportunities are. We have a fun event that night, and then we have a full day of expanded financial content that's based on these 5 pillars. So this is a little bit of a mini version of that event, but hopefully some of you guys will be there. If you're not, then we hope that you will come and enjoy that with us later. We will be launching our 23 business conference in June or July, so look for that registration. We're going to be in Charleston, South Carolina this year for our 20th anniversary in downtown Charleston, beautiful Charleston place. We're excited about that. We always have great contributions to our content in all business and financial concepts. I will also mention our framework business intelligence app. You're going to see some of that today. Taylor's going to talk through that a little bit and how you guys can use both the free version and the more expanded individual analysis version. This year we launched mastermind groups, which are full for the first half of the year, but love to see some of you in our second half. Those are led by Alita Mechtel on our team. We have a new concept called leadership sprints. I think I actually have some slides on these things in a sec. And then we have a financial team that is supporting with industry specific training and also coaching around financial performance. So really excited with the new opportunities that the Hinge team has launched this year. So already probably talked about most of these. This is our Thrive workshop. We're going to be at the Pendry in downtown Chicago. So really excited about that. Our next QuickBooks training is Tuesday, March 21st. It's from 12 to 2 o'clock. You can see where to go here at our website, hingeadvisors.com/success services to get signed up for that. Those have been really popular and beneficial for people who use QuickBooks but want to learn more about how to use that information to better manage their companies. We again launched our leadership sprints. This is a unique concept that's delivered by Tom Wood on our team. It's 30 minutes a week for various company teams. And it's so hard for me to describe this content because it really is on concepts that not only help people be better work leaders, but better personal leaders. And we believe that if you're not excellent at home, then you can't be excellent at work. and the other way around. So we have designed this concept to bring teams together to talk about leadership concepts that can be customized. Tom is also booked out for first quarter, and I think maybe has a couple of slots open for second quarter. If you're interested, you can also see the place to go there. And we have uploaded this presentation to the portal here, so you can always get that information from there. Love for you guys to follow us on social media. We make announcements about upcoming events and also try to keep relevant information out to you guys. We're not trying to bombard you with a bunch of stuff. I know you have stuff everywhere like we all do, but try to give you useful information about how to operate your business better. So this is what we hope to accomplish in this hour that we're with you guys. We want to talk about how to benchmark your school against the average financially healthy school. And this is the core of our concepts and the core of our framework app. But given your company's size and tuition rate structure, so that makes a big difference. You can go to frameworkbyhinge.com. We suggest that you might do that right now and look at that in parallel with the content that we are about to show you. So if you have the bandwidth to do that, pull up frameworkbyhinge.com, go to the free version, which will always be free. We've been doing this for people for 25 years. Input your license capacity and your average tuition rate. For most people is their full-time 3-year-old rate. And it will populate and show you what the average financially healthy school, given your size and tuition rate structure, would spend in each expense category. So we're going to show you some screenshots of that as we go. But if you have your own open while we do this content, I think that would be incredibly helpful. We want to help you strategize though. So we don't just want to say, oh, this number's off, or you're not doing well, or you're doing great here. We want to help you strategize with our best practices for what you can do in each category. And again, it's to support the quality of your program, not to distract from the quality of your program. And the last thing we want to do is we want to be sure that you are setting yourself up again to thrive in the future, to not be dependent on things that are short term, to be sure that you understand where the metrics should be and how to make changes that will align you with best practices for a thriving company. So those are our goals for this hour. And I am going to turn it over to Taylor to start talking about the key pillars of financial health and where we go from there.
Awesome. Thank you, Kathy. And like she mentioned, I am Taylor Leaphart. I am on the finance and evaluation team here at Hinge, and I'm super excited to be talking about this conversation. This is something that on a daily basis, we continue to talk about because it changes on a dime, especially in today's environment, especially in the industry that we all operate in. And these, now more than ever, are very important concepts that we all need to pay extra attention to, so that we can not only thrive in the future, but create sustainable cash flow to grow our company, but then again, to invest back into our families and back into our staff and create a culture that is not only financially stable, but sustainable for future legacies and childcare providers across the industry. So in addressing, before we get to kind of the meat of our agenda today, maybe good to step back and talk about framework for a second, and how the template that we're looking at in evaluating these financials and how we came up with these key 5 areas of focus. So as Kathy mentioned, framework is the tool that we use to really filter through all of our financials and P&Ls that our clients bring to us. The framework, that template, has been developed over decades of industry guidance and verified through multiple financials and regularly use for our clients. And the commonality that we see in successful, sustainable cash flow still rings true from the original template that Kathy put together decades prior. So I think this is a verified template that we continue to use and we are very confident in. And in looking at our clients' financials, we clearly see that these 5 areas stick out, that if the operator has a good handle on their occupancy, tuition rates, discounts, salary costs, and rent, and also the relationship between all of these aspects, they are well on their way, if not already, seeing the results on the bottom line. So let's jump right into it with occupancy here. Occupancy strategies. This is honestly the cornerstone and the first step that you should take in going on this journey and trying to achieve this financial health across your company. And we've created a couple of strategies here to kind of get us on that track and to realize that potential. But let's start at what we find from our framework and what we've experienced from our clients. Generally speaking, when we look at framework, we see a break-even point somewhere around the 50% in capacity, but we really push. We want to see 70% because that's when we start to see exponential growth toward our bottom line profit dollars. That 70% marker, in conjunction with the other metrics that we experience or we believe in our framework template, allows us to see about a 15% profit margin and then growing from there. So that's a really good frame of reference as we're moving forward in other occupancy strategies. Enroll capacity for each classroom, as well as focus on potential profit or your greatest potential profit generators. What does that mean? That 50% and 70% reference that I gave you for your school also can be drilled down to the classroom as well. So we think about our spread of classrooms. We know that our infant room is going to be probably our cost leader. If you're breaking even there, that is awesome, but we typically expect to lose a little bit of money there, all knowing that we're going to make up more and most of our profit in our toddlers and pre-K rooms. So how do we manage that profitability, and how do we maximize that? Kind of coming out of COVID, we've seen a lot of trends, and due to several different reasons, whether it be regulatory reasons or the constraint on staffing, kind of lowering the burden on our staffing, we have seen a lot of artificial capping on our enrollment. So what does that look like from our classroom perspective is, instead of running a 1-to-8 ratio, let's say, you might be running a 1-to-4, 1-to-5 ratio. Now, what does that do to your overall profitability? At that 50% mark, 50% of your students on that ratio would be about 4 to 5. That's generous in your break-even point. If you're having 4 to 5 kids in your toddlers and pre-K room, you're maybe breaking even. What we want to make the aggressive steps forward and getting back to maximizing our capacity in each classroom, because those 2 and 3 incremental students are purely profit at that point. So your classroom is paid for and those dollars go straight to your bottom line. So instead of running a 1-to-6 ratio where you're maybe breaking even, if we can get those 2 extra students in there, we are realizing very profitable margins and really seeing success down to the bottom line. So that's what we mean whenever we want to kind of push toward capacity on our classroom level and focusing in on the core of our classrooms as well, those toddlers, those pre-K rooms. In measuring occupancy from our clients and in our experience, we see that a lot of operators look at head count number from an enrollment standpoint. And we would argue that in measuring growth over time, as well as looking at your enrollment versus your expenses, we should be pushing toward a full-time equivalent number. So what a full-time equivalent number allows you to look at the full cost burden per child, rather than the diluted number that your part-time student might be looking at incurring a lot of those expenses, but you're not recognizing tuition adequately for the burden that they're pulling. So if we look at full-time equivalent, meaning 2 part-time students equals 1 full-time student, over time, as we begin to replace the 2 part-times for 1 full-time student, we will see a relatively increase in a sustainable metric going forward that allows us to really start to make strides and make some educated, informed managerial decisions that ultimately lead us to profit. Which leads us to, if we're have our occupancy in stride, we need to make sure that our tuition reflects a lot of the expenses that we're realizing because of our occupancy rates. From a macro level, historically, annually, the industry has seen about a 3 to 5% tuition rate increase. And if you layer that on, let's say, inflation, which is a good indicator of your cost increase, which has been about 2 to 3%. So we've been profitable as we've increased our tuition rates historically. In the last year, 18 months, inflation has been a big buzzword because it has doubled and sometimes tripled at some areas over that period. So we need to make sure that we are accurately reflecting that. If we are only increasing our tuition annually by 3%, we are losing that 3% in our profit. And that 6% is very generous. That's not really including staffing costs, which in some areas range from 10% annually to 30% annual increases. So we really need to make sure that we are dialed in on what the cost of care actually costs. And I know that's a little bit scary, a little bit daunting, that once we see our annual increase of our expenses year over year, and then kind of translate that, and that's what I need to increase my tuition. And what does that mean for my families? How does that come across? That kind of incites a little bit of panic in everybody. We've seen a lot of effective strategies over the past year in implementing this, and honestly, with very little to no pushback from parents. Over the course of those 18 months to 12 months, cost of living has gone up across the nation, nationwide, kind of universally, from gas prices to egg prices. So we have a tendency to expect a higher price, but also implementing strategies that stagger across your classrooms as well as your age groups and existing families to new families. There can be some very creative ways to recognize profit and still come out on top, even with the staffing troubles, with the inflation challenges and things of that nature. Kathy, do you have any insight into any strategies or experience in the industry that you can kind of relay into this experience?
Yeah, to add on to that, thank you, Taylor. That was fantastic information. To add on to the tuition rate conversation is that you guys heard Taylor say that historically most providers would increase their rates once a year and about 3 to 5%. In the last 2 years, we've seen much more aggressive strategies where there are multiple increases a year and more like 8 to 12% increases. And also you heard Taylor say with very little pushback, and that is absolutely true. We do get pretty pushy when we talk with people about their tuition rates. And someone has asked us a wonderful question, which plays into this so well. The question is, what needs to happen financially if we're running NACE ratios? I feel sometimes I want to move to state standards, but I want the quality. This is the answer. So the ratio is not the question. The question is, are you charging the tuition rate that reflects that quality of care? So most anytime you're having trouble meeting certain expense ratios, is less about expense control and more about, sometimes it's about expense control, and we'll give some ideas there, but usually it's more about, am I charging the tuition rate to reflect what I'm actually providing to people? So I would usually argue that parents would be more receptive to pay for the quality they're getting than they would to decrease the quality and not have to pay for it. One strategy, we mentioned here, grandfathering strategies. One strategy, when people feel like that it's impossible to go up as much as they need to at once, because we're also hearing record wait lists for classes, and especially infant toddler classes, you can do some creative things with tuition rates and discounting, which we're going to speak to next, on your current families and keep it healthy, but not crazy, and set your tuition rate where it needs to be for new families coming in. They can make the decision on whether to enroll or not, right? And you probably will see that it won't compromise your enrollment. Our biggest issue now, most everywhere, is the lack of staff and not the lack of enrollment. So if you're able to get your tuition rate structure to the place where you can afford what you need to bring those staff in and to cover other rising costs, then you should be in better shape. So we always like to talk here about the effect of discounts on your revenue stream. And this is our number 3 pillar of financial health. But I feel like this is very often a hidden danger, because the majority of companies that are giving discounts to the tuition don't really know the full effect of that discount. They don't really know what that's costing them. And eliminating discounts can very often get you farther in your financial health than a higher tuition rate increase. So the reason it's a hidden danger is a lot of companies will record the discounted tuition in their billing system instead of recording the stated rate minus the discount. So one of the things we built into the framework analysis tool is a way for you to be able to see by discount type and by classroom how much that's costing you. So you can then play some what if games within the system. You can have the system eliminate free days to see across the board how much that would save your company. You can have staff. I don't recommend you mess too much with staff child discounts. We'll talk about that in a minute. But you could see, what if I didn't give staff discounts in the infant room? Because like Taylor said, you're doing well if you even break even in your infant room. So if you give a lot of free tuition in there, it can be really difficult. But you can do in the system, eliminate staff discounts in the infant room and see what the financial effect of that is. And then you can play around with both at once. What if I went up this much on tuition, but I eliminated this discount? What if I only did it in this classroom and not this classroom? So we have the ability to play some what if games in there with your tuition rates and discounts. You can also play around with occupancy levels and what adding just those last few children, as Taylor mentioned, does to your overall financial picture. Because right over 70%, almost every tuition dollar falls straight to the bottom line. So that's your sweet spot. So think about some things for your discounts. Be careful with staff discounts. We need all the help we can get in attracting staff right now, but there is a trend away from offering discounts for infants and toddlers, and also sometimes limiting staff discounts to 2 children per staff. That's a tough one right now, though. I will say, I think hard about that one, but I know people who have eliminated all staff discounts with no pushback either. If you still offer any days parents don't pay for, you might call them free days, you might call them vacation days. The industry moved away from that 10 years ago, and I'm gonna be so preachy right here. This is low-hanging fruit for you guys. Eliminate it. Communicate really well to your families. Your tuition rate increase letter might say, given rising cost and rising teacher pay, we really need to go up 15% on tuition. But out of respect for our families, we are going to go up 8%, and we're going to eliminate vacation or free days. So there are ways to communicate what you're doing with that money. Parents always appreciate the special things you do for staff, and that's always a good way to communicate change. A lot of the industry is now moving away from multiple children in the same family discounts. So I would consider that one. I'll say about subsidy discounts that in some states you cannot charge parents the difference in what the government will pay for their tuition. And so that's just not even an option. That's a really hard environment to work in because those rates in most places, there are states that pay really, really well, even above private pay rates. But in most states, that isn't set at a level that affords great quality. So that one's tough. Also, if you're giving industry discounts, meaning IBM is next door to you and their parents get 10% off of their tuition, just be sure you're getting something from IBM. Are they promoting you to their staff? Are they allowing you to come in and do parenting classes? Can they cut your grass? Can they donate supplies? What are they doing for you? Because if the answer is nothing, those parents are probably coming to you anyway. And with an industry norm of a 10% discount, that's a lot of money. When we're saying to you that financial health starts at 15%, that allows you to reinvest in your company and in yourself, then giving away 10% is a lot. Taylor, do you have anything to add to tuition rates or discounts before I move?
No. I was just going to address one of the questions that we have in the chat was just kind of addressing what the national average or kind of the expected increase in tuition is now, giving the cost increases as well. And to your point, I think the effective increase nationally is probably around that 12 to 15%, given all of the cost incurred and increases that we're experiencing. But again, the tuition increase doesn't necessarily mean it's pure tuition. To Kathy's point, what she was saying, the discounts can be a huge tool in realizing effective growth to your total revenue. By eliminating a significant portion of your discounts, you can see upwards of 5 to 8% of realization to your revenue line. And then that can effectively mean 8 to 10%-ish tuition increase, which is much more manageable and much more tolerable. So it's a
good point, Taylor. Another question before we leave the revenue stream is registration and supply fees for the industry. So I'll just say there that the industry generally charges them once a year. So we still have a portion of the population that only charges them upon enrollment. If that's the case, consider every year. And also that those fees are another easy way to pick up revenue in the fall. I would say probably an average, and this can go all over the place, there's some huge ones, would be about $125 to $150 a year per child. And some people call them registration fees, some people call them supply fees, some people break it down between the two. So that's something that you can test in your area, but I would consider doing that once a year. And it's either done in the fall or in January. All right, I will let's see. No, I'm gonna talk about staff costs, aren't I? Okay. This is a tough one. That's why I get to talk about it, I guess. So what you see here is a screenshot of the free version of our framework app. So as you can see on the left, our app is going to let you input your occupancy, and it's going to give you a norm of 5% in discounts, even though, you know, we're tracking that. We may actually reduce that. We have to see change across the industry for a good bit of time to change our model, because short-term dips or increases, this model's changed very little in 25 years. Let me say, in the 25 years, we have changed a few things. We have decreased advertising costs because they're less expensive than they were 25 years ago. We've increased employee benefits because most people have to be more robust now than they did 25 years ago. We're working on technology fees because there's a real escalation in the sophistication of the industry, and there are fees associated with that. I've recently been asked, are you going to change your marker for staff percentages? And the answer is no, no. When I'm telling you this is a difficult industry and business to run, and that we feel like 15% bottom line is the beginning of financial health, we can't say, okay, well, we're just going to move forward and make less money. You aren't viable. You aren't good for quality. You're not good for your people. If you start to sacrifice, because who's going to be sacrificed in that? It's not your families or your teacher, it's you. And that just doesn't work. You know, we're all super nice people, and we all think if somebody has to suffer, it should be me. And it's completely the opposite. You can't be good for other people if you do that. So the answer is not going to be in changing the markers for what we can spend on staff. The answer is going to be setting our tuition rates or eliminating discounts to get to the balance that we can operate in the model that we know works and has worked across this industry for, you know, I'm closing in on 40 years now. So it's comforting to me that we know where we need to get to. We just have to continue to make shifts so that we get back to it. So in this staff cost section, and you can see on the left that we can expand the staff cost section, facility cost, program cost, and administrative cost, and we'll be doing that during the webinar. And then to the right, you can play with the occupancy when you input your own school's information to see the effect of increases and decreases in occupancy, because it's also good to know where your break-even point is from an occupancy standpoint. We all experienced that during COVID, right? We were at a negative effect for a while, everyone was. So it's important to know how full do you need to be to break even? So that's a useful tool for that. But in this salary section, so we're now down to the fourth pillar of our financial health and the biggest expense load, which is what do you spend on staff costs? And I'm gonna just in this expanded section, and there's, you know, we take a little liberty in what we put where. Generally, we don't know how much workers' comp insurance is for a company versus other types of insurance. So you're going to see that in our insurance line and facility costs. So just know that some people might think about expenses a little bit differently, but these are the basic staff costs that we know have to be loaded for every school. So at a 70% occupancy, we want a school that's fully loaded with a management team, all of the teaching staff for all of their time, their regular pay, their vacation pay, all of their holiday pay, all of their pay. We want their pay to be around 45% of the revenue. Now, at a lower number, because you guys heard Taylor talk about occupancy, this is why we say nothing else matters. Don't pay attention to these other pillars until you focus first on your enrollment. Because the balance between the revenue and the expense and that percentage only gets to financial health when you're 70% full. You can't be 50% full and only spend 45% of that on staff. You've got to have teachers in classrooms, and you've got openings in those classrooms. So adding that last child or two in each ratio is where you get to the place where you can balance this. As your occupancy gets higher, then of course that percent lowers. 42% is good at 75 and 80% occupancy. Some people dip into the high 30% at even higher occupancies. But we like this baseline level of 70% and knowing what those expenses should be. You also see, of course, every time we have overspending in salaries, that also affects payroll taxes, which are a percent of the salaries we pay. Benefits are a necessity now. Staff training and other staff costs and things like career paths and culture building, which I think are my next slide, are absolute must-dos now. They're not luxuries anymore. We're never going to attract staff based on what we can pay them. And the most successful teams that are keeping and attracting people now are doing it by creating a career path for that person, giving them the training, skills, and education they need, and creating a culture where those people feel valued and want to be there. If you don't do those things, don't even bother to try to pay enough. It's not a luxury anymore. It's just a complete necessity. So we've got a couple of questions around staff costs, and then I'm going to pitch it back over to Taylor to finish it up, and we'll take more questions. So we have a question about, is it normal for facilities to have a much higher capacity versus what your actual max head count is? We don't know how we ever get close to our license capacity, nor do we want to for quality purposes. Okay, so you are not alone. A lot of people make the choice to never go to their license capacity, and there's smart business reasons that you wouldn't want to. And a few of those are, let's say you have a 1-to-9 ratio, but you could put 20 children in a classroom. You're not going to put more than 18 and have to hire one more teacher for 2 children. So that's not even smart. That's one reason that you would not do that. Another reason is that you're choosing higher quality over what you could actually put in the building. And all of those are smart decisions. We like to use the license capacity though, because if you use a lot of people talk about effective capacity, and that's okay, you should know that. But also in your mind, it eliminates possibilities when you stay there. You could actually enroll those 2 extra children. You could change the purpose of that classroom to a different age group. You should, so we're not saying to you, you have to be 100% full to be financially healthy. We're saying know the effect of your choices. You know, you can, if you're operating at 90% full, use framework and see what it would look like at 100% full. And then say to yourself, I'm willing to accept that compromise because I want to operate at a higher quality level. So we're not saying not to do it. We're saying to be armed with the information about the effect of the choices you're making on your business. One more question on staff. Is the 12 to 15% before you pay yourself as an owner? I assume we're meaning the bottom line of 12 to 15% and not tuition rate increases. We believe that if you're at 70% full, the 15% bottom line is mainly what needs to be reinvested in your company. So that 15% is cash flow, Taylor talked about early on, and it requires a certain amount of cash flow to get that new bus and that new piece of playground equipment and to invest in new curriculum. And those things generally don't hit your financial statement. They would hit your balance sheet. And you have to pay yourself, as our guest here just brought up to us. So we feel like that's minimum profit to reinvest and take care of yourself. Now, whether you pay yourself a salary or not, that's just a tax question. Let your CPA decide. But you do have to take care of yourself, whether you're, no matter what type of company you are, whether it's the type where you need to pay yourself a salary, or you can just take draws out of the company, or you can maximize your own real estate and pay more rent over to that entity and you get the cash flow there. There are a lot of strategies there. All we know is that you have to do it at a level that's healthy for you personally. You cannot be awake in the middle of the night with a heart rush, wondering how you're going to make next week's payroll and be effective in your business. So I want you to make as much as possible, but I'm your advocate. You know, parents and staff have a lot of advocates right now. The articles are everywhere about how much it costs. We know it does. We're respectful of that. They're right. However, you guys are in business taking tremendous risk, operating a really difficult business, and you have to take care of yourselves as well. So I will move on to our facilities costs. Taylor, and pitch back to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So facilities cost kind of rounds out our pillars and is the second cost leader in your P&L generally. What is that made up of? Primarily is rent. We like to see rent utilization somewhere around the 13, and in some markets the 15%, and that's just based on the market that you're operating in. What the other ancillary things that we kind of generally categorize into our facilities costs are utilities, general maintenance, as well as the personnel that is accompanied by that. Excuse me, and property taxes and insurance. So all encompassing, you should be looking at a 22 to 25-ish range for your all-in facilities costs. So what are some strategies to kind of look at, and what are some things that we can look at in controlling and maximizing our bottom line from a cash flow perspective? Really, it pertains to what Kathy was alluding to earlier in reinvesting that cash flow back into your facility, whether that be playground, whether that be your facility branding and exterior appeal. When she was referencing that goes to your balance sheet, that goes into your balance sheet as a capital expenditure. So what would logically you might think, well, that just goes into my facility costs, but in actuality, we pull that out, that goes into the asset as a capital expenditure, and ultimately goes into a creation of value for your facility. We've had clients come in and give us their financial statements, and nothing sparkles or nothing crazy, but they're above average, they're doing really good. But the moment we step on property, you can instantly tell that they have been reinvesting, creating value into their facility, upgrading their playgrounds, making a vibrant environment for their programs to be held in. Their parking lots are great. It's all because they've created value. May not be tangible in the form of cash flow, but the minute you step on property, it's very evident that they've been reinvesting. And that's really the goal here, and what we see can be leveraged from a facilities cost standpoint, and the benefit of cash flowing down to the bottom line, given the parameters that we've kind of already explained. We're kind of at a crunch on time. I really want to leave about 10 minutes for questions. So the remaining slides are kind of rounding out our framework and the high level areas where we categorize most expenses and what you can see or expect to see when using this program. So secondly, program costs, generally a little bit lower, about 10-ish%, 10 to 15% maybe on your expenses. And what this would normally include is everything that would cost to perform and provide care in your programs and your curriculums on a day-to-day basis. Food, operating supplies, marketing, general things like that. And if we want to jump to the next slide, I think we have just a few. Yeah, so this is a big one. Annually reviewing your vendor contracts and your vendors agreements, just to make sure that you're getting the best bang for your buck so that you can maximize on the bottom line. It's all about the bottom line so that we can make sure that we are sustainably making decisions and reinvesting into our programs and into our families for the future. Same thing goes for food costs. One of the better trends that I think we've seen come out of COVID is the normalization of bringing your food to the center rather than us paying the cost. That's a 4 to 6% expense that now goes straight to your bottom line, because that's not reflected in your tuition. That's just an automatic profit increase. So that's a really good strategy that I would encourage you to kind of play with and maybe see the sensitivity into your families and your programs. Marketing is also a given, and Kathy alluded to that as one of the areas that have kind of fluctuated over time as the implementation of social media. And honestly, now you're probably your biggest area of marketing is your parents, is the value that you created in your program and in your curriculum, and your excited parents going out and telling the world how awesome y'all are doing, especially coming through the challenges that we've faced over the last 3 years. And then rounding out your P&L is admin costs. This should be around 2 to 4%, very minimal. Let's jump and see that. Yeah, and this would include kind of your back of house, your operating, your office expenses, licenses, some bank fees, all really your catch-all for your administration, your director, your assistant director, owner expenses. And just a couple of notes to add on that. Kathy also alluded to earlier, kind of the rise of the technology, excuse me, in the industry from payment systems and billing systems. And this is a really effective tool that I think we can leverage as an industry to, one, eliminate the margin of error, but two, really capture and make that communication accessible between parent, family, and provider, and the management teams of the provider. Kind of along that same vein, I think a lot of my generation has pushed this, just wanting control as much as possible, especially when it comes to their kids, having cameras and apps that open that communication channel so that we can see into the classroom, know what the child is learning that day, as well as get heads up on newsletters, events, things like that. But also for us, as parents, to be able to communicate to the provider as well. So I think all of these are very effective strategies that we can implement from an admin that pay off dividends later on down the road, and for that sustainable cash flow and overall health.
Yeah, you thought of some things I didn't even think of, Taylor, that I'll piggyback on. So thank you. I'm glad to have a second brain here. I'm glad that you mentioned using your parents and families as your marketing tool. We have heard very consistently in the last 6 months that the majority of new hires is coming through referrals from parents and other staff members. So historically, we heard Indeed as a resource for number one. We always have a representative from Indeed come to our conference and talk to us about effective ways to use that tool. But in the last 6 months, we heard a real shift into number one resource being referrals from staff and family. So there's some real creativity around that right now. So that was a good thought. The other thing I'll mention to add on to your content here is that cameras and parent communication apps are almost the norm now. There was a time when they were luxury. So I go way back to where, you know, at one point computers in the classroom was special and a sizzle, and then it became mandatory. And then we had foreign language instruction, and then that became mandatory. And there's an academic inflation of what is expected and what makes you special. And we always want people to have something that makes you special. We call it the sizzle factor. But very quickly, cameras in the classroom and parent communication apps and billing systems where parents can conveniently pay, and you're not tracking people down for payment. So great way to save on your staff costs. Those are expected at this point in most places as well. So we have a couple of questions we will take, and also we have about 7 minutes. So if anyone has any others, certainly hit them in the chat or the Q&A section. So if 15% bottom line is supposed to be invested back in the company and salaries assumed to have no owner pay in it, then where is suggested owner pay percentage in your framework? Assume no special tax reasons to not pay owners directly. So obviously, if you have a 15% bottom line, you have, and you are not included, you can pay yourself a salary. I would just, if you have a fully loaded management team, look at that percent and be sure that you're maintaining it at about 45%. You can pay yourself above that, and your actual percent could be 55%. And just know that when you're comparing yourself with this benchmark, you can pay yourself zero or every penny you make. We want you to pay yourself every penny you make, but just know that we can't benchmark that. So what we're benchmarking for you is what the fully loaded school should do. And then you need to get creative with your CPA about how you take the profits out of your company and your real estate. So that is completely separate from the numbers that we're talking about now. But thank you for asking that question. Assume no special tax reasons to not pay owners directly. Correct. It's really a tax question. You have to get paid, right? You do. You cannot survive and not pay yourself. But that is a better question for your tax advisor or your CPA to help you strategize what is the best way. And it varies depending on the type of structure your company is. So what is the best way, given your company type, for you to move money out of it for yourself, whether it's for you to live off of, or, you know, go on vacation with, or save, or whatever it is. Doesn't matter what you're doing with that money, you have to pay yourself. So that's a great question for your tax advisor that has way too many elements for us to generically make a recommendation on how that works. Did you say office and staff shouldn't be over 2%? Taylor, I think maybe this could have been confused with office and staff salaries. I think Taylor was just referring to administrative costs like postage and IT systems and copiers. And do you want to expand on that, Taylor?
No, that's exactly right. All the admin costs, exactly what Kathy was saying. Your material costs, your just back of house office expenses should be around that 2 to 4%. As far as your directors, your assistant directors, any management teams should be included in the salaries portion of their staff cost. So
I'll go back to it real quick so
Yep.
you can look at what is included in administrative cost here.
That's right. Any bank fees, office, postage, ancillary fees that have to do with back of house outside of the program and curriculum costs.
Great, thank you. Let us know if that didn't completely answer your question. We're happy to tackle it again. Do we have tax advisors we recommend? This is such a great question. I come from CPA public accounting world, and we're not incredibly known for our creativity and strategizing. We're really good at spitting out a piece of paper with numbers on it. I will say that I work personally and through Hinge with a person that I used to work with in my days in public accounting, and she is fantastic. And I don't know how much capacity she has, but if you will reach out to me directly, I will certainly get you aligned with her. We get this question a lot, and it's one of the reasons that we added in the feature of financial coaching for our childcare clients, so that they can connect with someone on our team each month to review their financial statements. We don't prepare those, but to review those and strategize, because that's where the hole is, right? Anybody can print, they should be able to print out a, acceptable financial statement, but then what do you do about it? All right, one more question from my good friend Nate Airy. How much should be the percentage for my overhead admin staff, like VP of Ops, regional directors, if I have several schools? Great question. So this can vary, but here's how we like to see it. When you're looking at our framework, these are fully loaded schools, so site level operations, right? So when we look at financial statements, there are a lot of different ways to report it. We like site level numbers, and then we like an overhead or administrative financial statement. Some people would charge that back to the schools, show it below the line. It doesn't really matter whether you do or not, but we do like to be able to see pure site level operations. What this percentage should be as it relates to your total gross revenue can be anywhere from 5 to 12%. And I know that's a wide range and, always not incredibly helpful, but it has the tendency to move in a direction like this as you grow. So you have 3 schools and now you need a regional director, and the percent's 15%, but you add a 4th and a 5th school, now it's down to 8. Now you need to add a CFO and it's up to 12%. Now you add a few more schools and it's down to 6. So over time, you really need people before you need those people. So it tends to move in kind of a zigzag line, but I hope that gives you the information that you need. And we are out of time, and I want to thank Taylor for his contribution here. He has added so much to the Hinge team and to our financial work, and we're grateful for him and his presence. We're grateful for each one of you guys for joining us. We're proud of you for still being here and rocking it over there at your school and honoring the families and the children that you guys are taking care of. It's so critical, and we appreciate you guys. Please reach out to the team if there's other information or any support that we can provide to help you personally or help you in your company and help you be the best that you can be. So take care and be well, friends, and we'll see you soon.